Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and the Diablo 4 December quarterly update is live. In this video, we're going to go through the final D4 dev update of the year, and probably the last one before Blizzconline in early 2021. We'll give a breakdown and our thoughts. Let's dive right in. Now, the first thing to note right here is that this is published by Blizzard Entertainment. In the past, we would see the author here being Grygla or Kim. Now this is just as an entity. Worthy of note is that David Kim, the lead systems designer, who was authored on the previous dev update in September, is no longer on the Diablo 4 team. He moved on to the World of Warcraft team shortly after the dev update. I do wonder if this will be addressed in this post. So scrolling down here, progress on the game continues at a steady clip, and we're excited about several big updates and revisions that the teams worked on for a long time that we are trying to complete before the holidays. Today's topic centers on one such major revision, which also happens to be the most requested topic this year: itemization. Items are the lifeblood of Diablo. They are the element of the game that captures your imagination and keeps you playing and wondering what if after you put the game down. It's very true that at the end of the day, a Diablo game, an ARPG, boils down to a loot piñata game. I don't mean that in the sense that we need to see lots of drops, but it's always about killing that monster to see what the drop is going to be. That appeal of what are we going to get? It's an elaborate slot machine. When you kill a monster, you're pulling on the slot machine and you're hoping to win big. Whether it's anticipating the next piece of perfectly rolled godly gear or kicking around item combinations in your head like a mad scientist, items are undoubtedly a major part of what makes Diablo so compelling and so different from other games. Understanding how important it is to get itemization right, we paid special attention to early player feedback about this part of the game. We knew that many more iterations awaited between what we showed you at BlizzCon 2019, our follow-up blogs, and the final game release. We also knew from past Diablo entries, plural, that we will need to have the time and resources to make these iterations. Thankfully, we have that baked into our current schedule. Getting all of your feedback encouraged us to move some of that iteration time forward so that we can get our newest direction in front of you sooner. Again, this is another example of the Diablo 4 devs listening and reacting to the community. Not just listening, but hearing and adjusting. Lead game designer Joe Shelley is going to walk us through all of our major itemization updates today. For some context, Joe Shelley was a big fan of Diablo 1, Diablo 2, and he was a senior game designer on Diablo 3. I believe he joined the team after the game launched, so he mostly contributed to Reaper of Souls. So no mention of David Kim, because typically it would have been David Kim who would have been speaking about itemization. Let's go on. We've reviewed every aspect of itemization from top to bottom, oh wow, and reworked elements that we felt weren't living up to their potential, from the individual stats that our classes tap into to the visual representation of items in your inventory. Of course, it's still early and we still have lots more playtesting and iterating to do, but we think this direction puts us down a more solid foundational path, and we couldn't be happier to share it with you today. Alright, this feels like it's going to be a big, substantial update here. Past updates on itemization was more just pulling feelers out there, saying, here's some preliminary ideas. Feels like they have something very solid to present today. Alright, they're saying that they keep tabs on social media, they're giving us places that we can communicate with them. Speaking of which, our next update will take place during BlizzConline rather than in blog form. We've read speculation about what it could be and want to ensure you that it is something chunky indeed. Without spoiling the surprise, let's just say it involves a new version of the campfire scene we showed you last BlizzCon. It's a new class. It's 100% the new class. So this confirms that the next quarterly update will be the BlizzConline update. There won't be something additional happening before or after that. And it makes sense to save the new class reveal for BlizzCon. That'll take us to 4 of the 5 revealed classes, meaning we're just a couple months away from learning what the 4th class in D4 will be. And this is written by game director Luis Barriga. So the rest now written by Joe Shelley. In deciding what changes to make to itemization, we focused on 3 core ideals. First, we want to strengthen class identity by providing intuitive fantasy hooks. Items and skills that lean into the fantasy of your class are best. So my first thought here of what they'd be referring to with regards to itemization is class restricted items, We saw that in Lord of Destruction, we see that in Diablo 3. Pretty much every class has one or multiple items that only that class can wear. I don't know that this is an idea that I love. To clarify, I'm not opposed to having items that are flavored for a class. I just always found it kind of silly. Why can't a wizard wear a barbarian belt? Is it too heavy? Why can't a barbarian wear a wizard hat? Is it too small for his head? This particularly frustrated me back in Lord of Destruction days because there was no smart loot, so you would often find drops for other classes that you couldn't equip yourself. So I have a bit of an ambivalent take on class-specific items in that I like the flavor of them. I do find it a little annoying or immersion breaking. Not that immersion is the most important thing for the long-term health of an ARPG, but it's one of those things that I like more in concept than in implementation. I'd imagine I'd be more content with a system where you can wear an off-class item, but you benefit from it less, or you don't benefit from its special property or something like that. Alright, moving on. Second, we want to support deeper customization through our itemization. Items should support and enhance your class, not define it. This is a big issue in Diablo 3 where you were your items. Without your gear, you pretty much had no power. This was not the case in Diablo 2. Items were a big part of your power, but even if you were naked, you still had some power onto yourself. Finally, we're landing on overall depth somewhere between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. We aim to provide years of things to discover and countless ways to build a class. Okay. While it's good that they're aiming for deeper than Diablo 3, they definitely needed to aim for deeper than Diablo 3, in my opinion. The fact that they're saying somewhere between D2 and D3, I mean, are they saying halfway? Are they saying closer to D3, closer to D2? I don't think Diablo 2 was too deep of a game. I think Diablo 2, depth-wise, was right about the sweet spot, so I'm a little concerned on that, and I'd be really curious to know if there's any examples of things they feel in D2 itemization was too deep. But we'll read on. Skill tree. Since releasing the last quarterly blog post on the skill tree, and in case you folks haven't seen my video on that, that's right here, we've been reviewing all of your feedback. Our team has also had a lot of hands-on time with our skill trees in frequent internal playtests, including an extended progression playtest. Based on this, we're confident that it's a solid direction, so we're going to iterate on it and make further improvements. For example, we're increasing the clustering of related skill nodes so players don't have to go across the tree to find skill upgrades for their builds. Okay, so basically if you're looking at that big tree, one cluster of branches might be more of the, say, fire skills if you're a sorceress. I imagine that's roughly what they're talking about. As opposed to just sort of randomly peppering everything around, there'll be a little bit more rhyme and reason to the layout. The ability to respecialize or respec your skills is a tricky one to balance. Like many of you, we want choices to matter and characters to feel different from each other, not just one click away from being identical to all the others. Shots fired at D3. We also want to encourage players to experiment with different skills when they start playing and discover builds that are right for them. In Diablo 4, you will be able to respec your skills and passives. The number of times you can do this will be unlimited, but it won't be free. It will be easy to do when you first start a character. As your character grows, the effort and cost required to respec will grow too. In the endgame, changing your build will require a significant investment to appropriately match the time and effort you've put into defining your character. That sounds like a fair compromise. It'll be impossible to make everyone happy with a respec system. If you have basically free respecs like in D3, then you're upsetting the people that like having no respecs, like feeling like you build a character and you cannot just change the identity of that character on a whim. These people won't be happy that you can still respec, but they'll be happier than if respecs are just totally free. Similarly, people who want just free respecs won't be fully happy that they have to make a new character at endgame or that it would cost a lot, but at least it's still giving the option in some way. I don't adore systems that are built around compromise. I don't think that's the optimum way to develop a game, but I think in this case, barring some completely new idea, I don't see a different workaround. I don't see a better solution than what they have here. What you definitely don't want is an entire game designed around compromise, because when you're making a game that's trying to make everyone happy, you end up making no one happy. But this sort of compromise is also relatively what's expected in the genre nowadays. So, going on to primary stats. In our last blog, we agreed with your feedback that too much of a character's power came from the items they wore, and we liked the imagery conjured by the phrases angelic power and demonic power, but they didn't reinforce the fantasy of what being a barbarian, a sorcerer, or a druid is all about. So we went back to our roots and looked at the classic RPG elements of early Diablo games. That's great to hear. What are you really doing when you wade through a horde of monsters and emerge a level higher on the other side? You're training. You're practicing a skill. You're getting better at what you do, becoming stronger, smarter. Whoa, what are we seeing here? What is this? After gaining a level, our barbarian has received 5 stat points and 2 skill points to spend. This is gonna make some people happy right here. Strength, intelligence, willpower, dexterity. A lot of people are very happy right now. Classic stat point allocation. I did not expect this. Let's read the explanation. When you gain a level, you'll receive points to spend in strength, intelligence, dex, or willpower along with your skill points. Of course, most barbarian builds are going to benefit from a healthy measure of strength, but as you build out your character and decide on skills and synergies, you'll want to mix in other attributes. Okay. I have thoughts, but I think I have to keep reading. Let me first see what they fully say here, because there are issues with going with a system like this that Diablo 3 and other ARPGs have attempted to solve by moving away from such a system. So I want to see how they're going to address these concerns. So we click here. Let's see this in full screen. Alright, strength increases skill damage, increases defense. Intelligence increases all resist. Willpower increases resource generation, improves healing received. Dex improves crit strike chance, improves dodge chance. So that's on a barbarian. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. Yeah, this isn't what I wanted to see. Alright. On a sorceress, intelligence increases skill damage. We're back to main stat. Oof. Okay, keeping an open mind, I'm gonna keep reading. I'll finish reading this section and then I'll explain my trepidation here. As a barbarian, each point of strength will increase the damage of your skills, while willpower improves fury generation and dex grants crit chance. Meanwhile, as a sorc, int increases skill damage, willpower grants crit chance, and dex hastens mana recovery. Each stat also confers a secondary defensive bonus. Okay, so it's interesting actually. I missed that at first, that every attribute does something different, or can do something different for every class. Okay, across both, strength increases defense, that's like armor in D3. Intelligence increases all resist for both. Willpower improves healing received for both, but willpower for Barb increases resource generation, and willpower for Sorc increases crit chance. Then dexterity. Okay, so it's basically dex and willpower are swapped for these two. For a Barb, increasing dex gives you more crit chance. For a Sorc, it's resource generation. That seems kind of arbitrary, to be honest. And then both improve dodge chance. What's the lore reason that dex increases your mana regeneration as a Sorc? Why does being more nimble let you recover mana faster? It almost feels like a change just for the sake of having a change. What would be more interesting was if it did totally different things. Just for argument's sake, not that this is a balanced idea, but increases spellcasting speed. And that would be something unique to the Sorc. No other class would have dex increased spellcasting speed. Basically, my point is if we're going to have the attributes do different things for different classes, I think it's more interesting if those things are very different as opposed to just swapping two attributes here and there in a non-terribly intuitive way. But let's keep reading. Okay, you can supplement your character's stat build with items to give you a little more willpower here, a little more strength there, but the vast majority of your stats will come from how you choose to spend your points. Alright, so again, they're stressing that most of your core attributes will be from your point investment and not from itemization. Itemization will be basically a bonus. Alright, and here's where it gets really interesting. Many of the nodes in each class skill tree have additional effects if you meet specific primary stat thresholds. Aha! Okay, good. Alright, this has completely turned my opinion around. You'll get the baseline effect of these nodes when you spend the skill points to unlock them, but get enough of the corresponding primary stat and the bonus effect will activate. Alright, here's what I've been hoping for. Alright, let's take a look at this. So Whirlwind, by default, Fury costs 10 per second, does damage. Upgrade, Whirlwind restores 1 Fury each time it hits an enemy. So this would be like, you put a point into this into your skill tree. This is an investment you make. Whirlwind Upgrade, Whirlwind no longer slows the barb's movement speed while active. And if you have 150 dex, Whirlwind provides a 3% movement speed boost each second while active, stacking up to 15%. This, alright, beautiful. Okay, this addresses my major concern. Oh, I love it. Whirlwind Upgrade, crit strike damage is increased by 10% if you have 225 strength and dex. Whirlwind also provides plus 1% crit strike damage per second while active, stacking up to 20%. Oh, I am happy to see this. It's a quote new idea. It's a new idea in Diablo. It plays upon existing ideas in ARPGs. Let's look at the Sorc example here. Ice Blades. Mana cost 20, conjures blades, they last 12 seconds, slash enemies. If this were put into an enchant slot, we described what enchant slots are in a previous dev update. Ice Blades are automatically conjured after you apply 75 chill. This upgrade increases the summon duration of Ice Blades by 5 seconds, and this upgrade make them emit a brief chill aura that will chill nearby enemies, that slows them. If you have 140 willpower, Ice Blades deal additional damage to frozen targets. Nice. This isn't a great example. The other example is really good. I'll explain why this isn't a great example. You'll want to think carefully about how you allocate your stat points to activate these effects. Okay, so I'm going to explain the issue that I have with stat systems and why I feel they've addressed this with this system right here. So what we typically have observed in RPGs is that stat point allocation is a solved game. It's something that gives the illusion of choice. You feel like, oh, I could maybe put some in strength, I'll put some in intelligence, maybe I'll pop a couple points into dex, and then when you actually fully learn the game, you realize that is a terrible strategy, and that there's a specific formula that you have to follow to optimize your stat points. In Diablo 3, it's the most straightforward thing where all you care about is your main stat. So as a barbarian, your main stat would be strength, because that increases your skill damage. As a wizard, it would be intelligence, because that increases your skill damage. And in fact, as I look at this again, I realize that the Sorc example was not bad. I mistook willpower for intelligence. Okay, again, I'll explain in a bit here. So even in Diablo 2, stat allocation was, for the vast majority of builds, an illusion of choice. It was a solved meta. Yes, people can play suboptimally. You always have the option to play suboptimally, but why not design a game where even with optimal play, you can have choice and personalization? So in Diablo 2, the vast majority of builds basically would get enough strength to equip their gear and then dump everything else into vitality. There are exceptions, I know people always want to point that out, but that is the default meta. So as I was looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, well, increases skill damage, that's going to be a big dump. All resist, probably not going to put that. Resource generation, healing received, probably not going to put that. Crit chance, okay, maybe there. So some really smart folks are going to data mine, they're going to figure out the exact math on the systems, and they're going to come up with a formula on what the most effective tactic to do is here in allocating your attribute points for every class. Is it a bad system? No, but it's a boring system. However, now that they have shown that they have certain skill nodes that could have certain effects that activate when you reach specific attribute thresholds, now we have a reason to care about other attributes outside of this specific formula for maximizing your damage. That I find really interesting. So let's say, for instance, the most optimum strategy for a barbarian is just dump everything into strength. Well, sure, for the default barbarian maybe, but depending on what build you're going with, what skills you're going to choose, what nodes you're going to pick for those skills, maybe you need 140 dex in order to activate a specific node that you really want in your build. Now you have a reason to reach a specific dexterity threshold. Maybe there'll be one with intelligence. So we can have 2 barbarians, and maybe my barbarian is going to have a bunch of strength. Maybe your barbarian will have a bunch of willpower, because we're going for different skill nodes. Now this is more interesting to me. And the reason I thought the Sork example was bad was I thought that willpower was the thing that increases damage for the Sork. Because what you don't really want is that the default dump stat, let's say it would be intelligence for skill damage, to be the aiming threshold to unlock additional nodes. If you're already building up tons of intelligence, then it's just a free bonus. You're not sacrificing anything, you're not making any difficult decision. If I want to go for this powerful node, I need to pay a price, and that price is going to be putting points into strength, because as a Sork, I don't typically care about strength. So this over here is what has sold me on this system. Alright, weapon types. Next section. As we hinted at in our last blog, we're making substantial changes to core itemization. We'll start by looking at the many different weapons available to classes in Diablo 4. Our weapon types look visually distinct and have meaningful effects on gameplay through features like the Barbarian's arsenal system. We've also done a lot of work in the game engine to make weapons feel more real and physical, like the Barbarian carving a trough through the ground with their mace during upheaval. Okay, I see what they mean. I wonder how long it lingers. But something was still missing. Wands should be faster than quarterstaves, and swords and maces should do different things. Oh my god, this was like a major criticism I had way back in the day. This is almost like word for word. Oh man. To see what that feels like in action, we've added weapon speeds and inherent characteristics to all weapons in our latest internal test environment. A major concern that I had with weapons in Diablo 4 was I don't want a weapon type to just be a piece of art, a 3D model. I want there to be actual differences between equipping a dagger, a sword, an axe. There should be some mechanical distinction beyond just what it looks like. Alright, Conjuration Omen, let's take a look at these. Conjuration Omen, rare wand. So there's an attack value, that's grossly how much damage it's gonna do. Very fast weapon, 3% crit strike chance. So my understanding is that these are the implicit characteristics of a wand. And these are extra affixes. I might be getting that wrong, but I'm sure it's explained. Compare that to the rare staff. So I'm guessing a wand is a one-hander, a staff is a two-hander. So more attack damage, that makes sense, but it's a slower weapon, and it generates resource implicitly. Whereas this gives crit chance. This is everything I wanted. I couldn't ask for more. In general, one-handed weapons excel at letting you attack and reposition quickly, while slower two-handed weapons deal more damage. You can really feel the differences between them. So this is wand and an offhand book, and that's, yeah, look at that. You can opt for a staff to cast more damaging frostbolts, or a wand to channel them more quickly. In addition to speed, each type of weapon has an inherent physical characteristic. For shields, this is block value, meaning that any shield you find in Sanctuary is going to have block, in addition to any magical affixes it may have. As physical properties, these traits are consistent across all weapons of the same type and cannot be modified. You might notice another thing about these items, they're high-res renders of the actual equipment. In a game like Diablo, icons are important. They often contribute as much to the identity of a cool piece of loot as the in-game representation on your character. Items that don't appear on your character, like rings, are defined by their icons. We've upgraded all of them. I did notice that I missed the art. I thought the art was nice. I think the fact that I'm seeing a bit of aliasing here and there is maybe not helping. So you compare that, for example, to the old item icons. I like those. I don't know. That was nice art. But let's look at these affixes. So, buckler, 1 shield block value as the implicit. We don't have another shield to compare it to, but let's compare here. But let's look at this magic wand, weapon attack, very fast weapon for crit strike chance. We already saw a wand before. Alright, rare axe, weapon attack, fast weapon, not very fast, 30% chance to inflict bleed for 30% damage over 5 seconds. So axes will have as their implicit a bleed chance. I am so happy with this. To me, this is an evolution of D2. D2 had weapon attack speed. It also had weapon reach, This wasn't super obvious to all players. Some weapons basically were longer, some melee weapons were longer, and therefore you can hit enemies from further away. I think this is more interesting to have these more explicit implicits. Onto item qualities. We've also made some exciting changes to the game's item qualities. Philosophically, we like the clarity of analysis afforded by clearly understood item tiers. In other words, we think players of all skill levels benefit from not having to scrutinize every single item that drops to see if it might be an upgrade for them. Blue magic items are good, but yellow rares are usually better. There's a great feeling of progression when you graduate into items with greater complexity, more powerful effects, and cooler looks as you level up. And the game-changing powers found on the legendary items in Diablo 3 are exciting and offer many possible effects that just aren't possible with regular affixes. That said, we don't want to end up in a place where the right decision is to ignore every item that doesn't have a glowing orange sky beam. Very happy with what I've heard right now. I think this is completely fair. Rares should usually be better than blues. There is that nice feeling of progression from going from one tier of gear to another. But I don't want to be in a position where we ignore anything that isn't a legendary. This is exactly what I want to be hearing. So we're making a lot of exciting changes here. We're increasing the potential power of individual affixes on magic items, the way it was in Diablo 2. So in Diablo 2, basically, a magic item was often worse than a rare. It has fewer affixes, but the possibility exists for its affixes to roll higher than on a rare. Let's keep reading. We're increasing the max number of affixes on rare and better items in the endgame. Legendary affixes now roll randomly, yes, really, on legendary items. And unique items will replace mythics. Whoa. Okay, let's take a look at this example. So, 3 staffs. First off, the first thing you notice, the damage is the same across all 3. That's very important on a weapon specifically, because in general, when weapon attack is so crucial to your character, then other affixes don't really matter. You're always going to opt for the legendary if the weapon attack is just straight out better. So equalizing that is a good idea. They're all a staff, so they all have, oh, look at that. Oh, the implicit is higher. 7% resource generation, 6%, 5%. Interesting. Okay. Then this has 1 socket, a mobilized chance. This also has a mobilized chance, but it's lower. This also has a mobilized chance, but it's even lower. So legendary to magic, it's almost double. I should specify that we shouldn't actually compare the difference, because they can always tool that, right? Whether they want to make it double, 1.5, 1.2, 1.1, 10% higher. That's just tooling numbers. That's not the important takeaway here. What's important is that it is higher, then this one has more affixes, and this one has even more affixes, plus the legendary affix. Now, I don't know if this is intentional as well, but this has no sockets, this has 2, this has 1. So I don't know if they're meaning to convey that legendary items will not have sockets, rares can have up to 2, and magic can only have 1. I'm not sure if that's the intended message, but very interesting that they're now deciding to have legendary properties be randomly associated with different items. But mythics are being replaced with uniques, and presumably uniques, if they have a legendary property, will always be fixed. So let's keep reading. You can think of legendary items as rare items with 1 affix replaced with a legendary effect. These new legendary affixes work just like regular affixes, in that they can roll randomly on different items and in different slots. Many can be used by any class, while some are specific to a particular class. Can't decide between making your chill effects freeze faster or more damaging ground effects for your boots? No problem. Legendary affixes aren't restricted to a specific slot. Boots of Perilous Tread. When you stand inside your own damaging ground effects, you increase the damage they deal by 27%. That's an interesting effect. Okay, so they're showing that it could be on multiple different items, okay? Your chill effects will trigger freeze 25% faster, but you deal 30% less frost damage. So that's when you care more about the CC. Maybe you're using a chill effect just for crowd control and not for damage. You'd go for this. We see this now also on an amulet. Oh, Boots of Chilling Frost, Okay, so Perilous Tread. This is the suffix that represents this affix. Gotcha. 3 curses. Meteor gains a 45% critical strike damage bonus against vulnerable targets. Stonewall increases the duration of your defensive skills by 38%. Now, previously they mentioned a game system whereby you can add a legendary property to a rare item. I wonder if this came as a result of that, as a result of dissociating a legendary power from a legendary item. I wonder if they still want to have that system now. You'll notice a variety of our affixes in the examples above, including elemental resistances and sockets for gems and runes, which can appear on items in place of another affix. Oh, okay, it's just that a socket is a potential affix, okay. And of course, attack comes from your weapons while defense comes from your armor. With the increase to the max number of affixes available on items, we'll also be adding new affixes to the game to make sure there's plenty of diversity. Wonderful. Uniques. Unique items are making a comeback in a big way in D4. Lots of D2 fans happy right now. We're embracing the fantasy of these build-around items with completely fixed affixes, heavily thematic and usually class-specific powers, and distinctive looks. Alright, real quick breakdown. Unique items in Diablo 2 were items that always rolled the same affixes. The roll on the affix can change. For instance, it could be like 35 max life, or 46 max life, or 70 max life, but it always has max life. It always has elite damage reduction, etc. Compare this to legendaries in D3 that have random affixes, but always have, or typically have, some legendary power. This feels like a combination of the two systems, which to me is the best of both worlds. We're getting those predictable affixes, plus the cool effects, the extra effects from legendary properties in D3. So Kilt of the Plaguebringer, max life, elite damage reduction, reduced potion cooldown, +1 rank to hunt the weak. So this is going to be for a specific class, presumably a druid, and its special property, your poisons no longer deal damage over time. Instead, 127% of the total damage is dealt to the target when your poisons expire. Interesting. It's not restricted to a specific class, but presumably Hunt the Weak is a skill associated with a certain class, so you can still wear it on any class, but you might not benefit from Hunt the Weak. Alright, Stormwalker's Cudgel. Fast weapon, overpower chance implicit, 13 all stats, 6% melee damage, crit strike damage, attack speed, hit effect. When Hurricane deals damage, there is a chance to automatically cast Tornado at the target for free. Druid only. And Mad Wolf's Glee. Strength, max life, dodge, damage reduction. Poisoned enemies hit by your Lacerate or Thrash instantly deal 25% of the remaining damage to all nearby enemies. Druid only. We still like the idea of mythic items, but we don't want to create an item quality that invalidates all others, so they're out for now. One of the things we loved most about them was the promise of getting random legendary powers on an item, so we folded that into our baseline legendary design. With the addition of the skills and passive tree, primary stat points, and changes to items in D4, we can't wait to see all the builds you'll create. Maybe you'll focus on skills augmented by uniques we designed, create something from scratch out of different legendary affixes, discover a creative pairing of primary stats with specific skills, or even incorporate the odd rare or magic item to maximize a specific affix to great effect. We're excited to read through the community feedback on the updates in this blog. As always, please remember that none of this is final, as the game is still actively in development. Your constructive discussions around these features will continue to help Diablo 4, and we greatly appreciate your support and thoughts about the game. We will continue working on itemization throughout the development of Diablo 4, and we're looking forward to seeing you at Blizzconline next year. We have lots to share in 2021 regarding some of our other features, and we can't wait to tell you about them. Alright, so overall, this is great. A little summary here. Let's go over some of the stuff. I have a couple extra thoughts to add. So primary stat system, I believe overall this is a positive addition, positive change. I especially like that they have extra skill effects, mind you, that unlock when you hit specific stat priorities. What'll be important here is to ensure that these things that unlock are worth the investment of stat points. If it's just a small little bonus, that might not incentivize someone to dump 150 into dexterity. Weapon types, I love what they've done here. I love this. I hope it's also on armor. I mean, it's not as imperative, but just baseline, having it on weapons, great idea. Item qualities, good change overall. One thing that I've just realized though, is that if your legendary properties can roll randomly on any item, we're probably never going to equip blues or yellows in the endgame. Why? odds are we can find, let's say we have 11 itemization slots, odds are you can find 11 legendary properties that benefit your build. In general, the way it would work in Diablo 3, for instance, we see this on necromancers, for instance. Often, necromancers, for their offhand item, don't have any legendaries that have properties good enough to build around. So the offhand item is sort of, well, whatever rolls with good stats, and the legendary property doesn't matter. If, however, I can have literally any legendary property in the game, I'm going to keep looking for an offhand until I get a legendary property that I desire. And presumably the benefit of that legendary property will offset whatever higher stat a blue or a yellow will give. So I don't know how many legendary properties they intend to have, but if it's a large number, then presumably any build should be able to find 11 legendary properties that would benefit them more than 7% more immobilized chance. I still think an interesting idea for blues and rares could be using them somehow as crafting bases. It could be more of an endgame thing, it could be more of a top-end player type thing that really bothers with this sort of thing. Because as of right now, while I do believe this is a positive change to encourage the use of blues and yellows, it just looks as though they're still going to be overpowered by being able to roll any legendary property in any slot. Other than that though, I'm really liking all of these changes. And I'm especially liking, even if I don't agree with every change 100%, I love the direction and the reasons behind making these decisions and going with these design philosophies. So I think this was a fantastic update. I think this is something that a lot of us are really looking forward to. And I do have to say, I do feel like Blizzard delivered on this one. But I'm just one voice. Sound off with your voices in the comments, folks. What do you think about this dev update? Do you like these changes? Do you dislike anything? Do you want to see anything different? Sound off in the comments. And do be sure to have checked out our previous dev update video on the skill tree in case you missed it. And that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.